Hello, Comsverse. Hope you're all doing well and having a great time. My name is Ståle Hansen, and I'm the producer for this session. As always, please ask your questions in the Q&A, and we will go through them at the end of the session. If you don't have time for all of them, we will copy them over to the breakout session, which we will link by the end of this session. This session is called Successfully Driving Adoption of Microsoft Teams and will be presented by Barry Coombs and Anthony Chairman. Take it away, guys.
Thank you ever so much for hosting today, and thank you ever so much everyone for joining. We really do appreciate it, and we hope you're enjoying your Comsverse experience. I know all of those that have put the energy into putting on this event have had a number of hurdles to overcome. Certainly been testing times. We were hoping to obviously be down at Mercedes-Benz World, but we're now got this amazing virtual event that people like Ståle that has put hosting us today have made possible alongside Mark and team. So thank you ever so much to everybody. And thank you ever so much to the sponsors of the conference who are making this possible. I'm Barry Coombs. I work for Computerworld. We are one of the sponsors for the conference, and we're really looking forward to hopefully seeing many of you next year for the in-person conference. So my role at Computerworld is I'm Chief Technologist. I concentrate on looking at technologies that we at Computerworld adopt, looking at best practices, looking at how our customers implement and make use of these technologies. And I'm spending most of my time, and have done for the last 2 years now, looking at how Microsoft Teams can be truly effectively used inside organizations. I've been a blogger, podcast host, industry representative for the last 10 years, been lucky enough to be a VMware vExpert during that time. And now, as I say, most of my time and energy has been put into the Microsoft community and helping people get more familiar. I'm joined today by my co-host, Anthony Charman.
Hi there, I'm Anthony Charman. I'm a business change specialist. I've spent a lot of my time over the last years, and I've worked with Barry for over 10 years now, working with businesses, looking at new technologies and how they fit into those businesses, and almost kind of acting as a mediator between technology and businesses. So very, very involved now in Microsoft Teams, which is the biggest element of our business now.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Anthony. And something that's really important to us is, as we're going through the presentation, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to use that Q&A feature. We really want that interaction. It can be very difficult in these types of presentations. So if there is something you do want to ask, don't be shy, ask the question, and we'll make sure that we do come to that. So just a little bit more information about us. Computerworld is UK-based solution provider. We're a Dell Platinum partner, a VMware Enterprise partner, and a Microsoft Gold partner around all the areas that you would expect us to. What does make us different is our in-house technical team is probably the largest part of the organisation. We really do pride ourselves on our ability to be able to help our customers truly see the value out of the solutions they deliver. We're spending a lot of our time at the moment around not just the Microsoft technical configuration and maintenance support, but also the business change and adoption training side of it as well. We're also able to supply things like Teams rooms, so we partner with the likes of Poly, Dell laptop devices, as well as the Dell AV portfolio as well. So if we can be of assistance to you, then please do reach out, as well as those other areas around your data center and security and protection as well. Now, the final piece is we are offering free strategy sessions. So if you'd really like to just discuss with us how you could make your adoption more successful, or maybe you're planning a migration to 365, feel free to scan the QR code or go to the URL here. Also, if you would like to win a Lego Technics Land Rover, there's the option to enter that draw there as well. I certainly want one of them. Maybe I wish I could enter the competition myself, but they do seem to go down well. So obviously today we are concentrating on how to successfully adopt Microsoft Teams, and I think to many, when we're speaking to this, it's made up of two types of people. There are those that really understand the need to ensure that an organisation successfully adopt these tools, that really can see benefits from it, that are able to simplify the way they work or work in a more effective way with the tool set. But there are also those IT managers and IT professionals that say, well, we've already rolled it out. People are already utilising it. We moved our telephony over to Teams and people have got it. Now, the challenge we see in those environments, and don't get me wrong, Teams is very easy to use for a majority of people. However, we've got this concept called shadow IT, which hopefully many of you will have heard of before, which is typically where the users go out there and choose a technology that they want to use that isn't supported by IT, which ends up in resulting in business risk where we can't protect the data. I see Microsoft Teams and Office 365 introducing shadow IT in a different way, where adoption isn't carefully handled. And what ends up happening is those users that are more tech savvy, that are more willing to be early adopters, will end up looking at this technology and utilising it in a way that benefits them, whilst leaving other colleagues behind. Now, that means that not only do users come confused as to where they should be finding information, where they should be working on things, where documents are stored, but it also means that you end up kind of fragmenting that communication strategy across your business. So whilst, yes, you can roll it out and you will see some success, we hope to be able to, in this presentation, help you bring it all together to make sure that you're bringing everyone in the organisation in the same direction. So I'm going to pass over to Anthony Charman now, that's going to talk about more about Microsoft Teams and adoption.
Yeah. Okay, but if you want to just pop forward to the next slide, it's probably a good place for me to start. Which is, where the business meets the technology. And one of the first things we need to realize with Microsoft Teams that it isn't a solution. It's actually a toolkit. It's, every time you go to the waffle, we'll find another application has been added in there. There are just numerous elements to Microsoft Teams. So it's not like implementing a CRM system where we, the CRM system has a place for the right data and in the right place. It has the process built into it. It has the reports at the other end of it. And all we need to do within the implementation is get the information from our organization and feed it in one end, and then let it go through the processes, and then interpret the reports in the right way and train people how to do that. Teams is much more than that. I'm really disappointed that we haven't been able to be at this event at Mercedes-Benz World, because I'm fascinated by the kind of cars that they produce. And I thought about this in parallel with what this is, what we're seeing. When a mechanic walks in on his first day at Mercedes-Benz, they don't just hand him a toolkit and say, there you are, get on with the job. That would be an absolute disaster, because once he gets his hands on a car, he wouldn't know what to do. He wouldn't know the objectives of what they're trying to achieve with the car, and he wouldn't know which tools to use to do which particular jobs within that car. And it's the same with Microsoft Teams. And this is one of the issues that we get. And Barry alluded to this in his little bit about shadow IT. We have seen organizations who say, right, we've done the technical bit, we've rolled out Teams, everyone's getting on with it. And a few weeks later, they're saying, well, we've now got 500 Teams appeared in our environment. And it all seems to be going all right, but it actually turns into chaos. So what we need to be able to do within Microsoft Teams implementation is provide a good framework of how it's going to be implemented and set some rules for how people are going to use the tools available in Teams to actually benefit the business. We just pop to the next slide, Barry. Teams, implementing Teams is actually consists of two interlocked projects. The technology bit is the bit that most of us in IT are used to. Sorting things like the identity management, the networking, getting the email solutions migrated into Exchange Online, sorting all of the security bits. They're the things that we do well in IT, or some of us do well in IT. What is difficult is when we have to start talking to the users. And a successful technology project is often one which the users don't notice. If we've managed to move gigabytes of email from our on-site system into the cloud and the users haven't noticed, then that's a successful project. So from a technology point of view, we're used to working in that environment. The other project that's involved in this, and this is the one we're focusing on today, is the business project. This is when it gets messy because users get involved in the process. To have a successful business project, to bring the tools that are available within Microsoft Teams to the business and get benefit for the business from those tools, that's the project that needs to be driven by the business. It needs to be involving the users. The users need to play a part in there. We need to go and listen to the users, and we need to take the information they give us and feedback. We need to go into our user departments and understand the business flows that are happening there and apply the technology to those and help people understand how to use the new tools to in the best possible way to bring that kind of level of efficiency. We need to be thinking about designing training. We can't just send people off on standard how to use Teams courses, because it's not an application, it's tools, and we need to show them how to use tools within the environment that they're working in. We have a kind of adage at Computer World, which is has worked for our technology projects, but works even more for our Teams projects, in that we can't do Microsoft Teams to an organization. We need to do Microsoft Teams with an organization. And more, it's a IT department not able to do the technology bits, you know, a Teams project to the organization, but having to do it with the organization. So that involves getting involved with people, and people we'd rather avoid at times. But it involves getting involved with people. And the problem with people is they're not like servers. They don't work in a consistent and logical way. They have opinions. They can be reluctant to change. They have their own agendas, and they communicate in different ways. And we need to become aware of those. I love this slide in some ways because I think it's a very, very good you know, view of how people from different generations communicate. I hate this slide in one particular way, in that I unfortunately fall into the baby boomer column on here, being born in 1963, which just, you know, just makes me feel very old. But if you look at this slide, and this is one we stole from a presentation we did at Define Tomorrow conference with Polly, and I can certainly agree with this. If you look across, the columns are different generations of people, and the rows are how people like to communicate. And I fall firmly in that baby boomer column. I like to meet people in person. I've been very frustrated through this whole coronavirus thing that I've spent so much time on the video to people, and I'm really kind of looking forward to being able to meet more and more people face to face. I've not seen Barry in the flesh for what, 4 months now, so it's I find that quite challenging. However, I know people, colleagues that I work with, millennials, who quite happily text message people who are sat 3 desks from them. Would not walk, you know, wouldn't bother to get out of their seat and walk across the office to go and see someone else. So this just shows the ways in which people from different generations prefer to communicate, and it's a good thing to factor into when you're looking at rolling out training on how to use the tools that are available within Teams.
And I think, well, I like this slide because I fall into the millennials just. So whilst I haven't seen Anthony for the last 3 to 4 months, I feel like I have. We've been talking probably more like a Generation Z. I like video meetings and things like that. And what is important about all of these things is actually we cannot steer Microsoft Teams down any one of these routes if we are expecting to have people across generations working inside our organization. We need to enable them to work in a way that is effective for them whilst meeting a set of corporate standards to make sure they don't miss any information, and information is stored where it should be stored. Now, from my perspective and what we've been doing, there's 2 key teams outside of the ones that you may be expecting, sort of the technical team and the users, that we need to make sure that we bring together during the process of driving adoption within Microsoft Teams and Office 365. The first is the project board. With the project board, you're really looking to get senior stakeholders in your organization, people that kind of have an influence as to the way that people work, the way that they communicate, the people that set standards, the people that are leading what goes on inside your organization. Now, if you're unable to get these people as part of the project, you are going to struggle. If we can't start change at the top of an organization, then we can end up with things like sporadic adoption, like we were talking about earlier. Now, when you get that team together, first of all, kind of show them what is possible. Agree actually what you want to achieve with the project. What does good look like? We should be focusing on the outcomes of this project and not the milestones that we're going to take along the way to make sure that we are successful. And ultimately, we want to make sure we're having a business conversation, understand what the business challenges are, understand what the departmental challenges are, understand where the flow of communication and documents and work goes throughout the business. This project board you will come back to regularly to give them updates for what's going on, and they also may make up part of the departmental meetings or the champions meetings that we're going to discuss as we move forward. So you've gone out there, you've sought the stakeholders inside the business, you've formed a project board, you've agreed your goals. What are you trying to achieve by driving the adoption with Microsoft Teams? The next thing to do is find out who are going to be your champions. Now, your champions should be spread across your organisation. Ideally, you should have representatives of each and every department, and you may choose to break this down into smaller stints if you're a larger organisation, so concentrating on a department at a time, as long as you're not going to create a barrier for communication between two interconnected departments. Now, these champions should be people that are change champions. They're people that want to see change inside the business. They aren't afraid to be early adopters. They're not maybe the most tech savvy, but they're willing to learn and they want to be learning. We want to make sure that these people are truly bought into what is going to happen. They're going to be our first line of defense out in the department, stopping the IT department being overrun by support tickets when people are struggling in the early days. So we should think about how are we going to make these people part of our team? How are we going to show them that we really respect and are really grateful for what they're doing for us? So there's some great things that we've implemented with our customers, things like swag. So one of our customers did some skins for the laptop saying that they were digital champions or 365 champions. We've seen t-shirts, we've seen stickers. I've seen VIP access to the service desk. Recognizing that these people are saving IT time, they've agreed to log any ticket that comes in from these people up one level. So if it normally would have been a category 3 ticket, they get an upgrade to a category 2 ticket. But also what may appeal to these people, the fact they get enhanced and regular training. They're involved in the process with what's going on. We want to protect these people. We want to bring them along on the journey. They are a key element to the success of this adoption moving forward. But what is important is when we're having these conversations, when we're looking as to what we're going to be doing and how we're going to be successful, is we understand that this is a journey. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for business wins. Now, we'll come on to it a little bit later, but Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365, including technologies like Yammer, involve change that can happen at multiple levels. We've got the outer loop of communication, which we'll give a little bit more clarity on a little bit later, the inner loop of communication, then we've got that direct communication. So we've got to agree across the board as to what are the non-negotiables, what are the things at a company level that we're going to make sure that we are setting in stone. What tools do we want people to use? But when we're looking at it at a department basis, we should be looking at not only the quick wins, those are important. Let's understand how each and every department is going to use Teams. What teams do they need? What channels do they need? Who is going to have responsibility for creating teams? Is everybody going to have the ability to create teams, or is it just going to be a subset of people? What we see a lot of organisations do is choose initially that only the digital champions can create teams. And when everything starts to get going, when the base teams are created, when everything is moving, people know what they're doing, they then release that a little bit more to allow more flexibility. Are we going to have naming standards? Are we going to have expiry configured on Teams? What is the security configuration going to be like around it? We make sure we document these things. We make sure we create those through them and run through it with the users. But it is important that we also look at the strategy for things like file storage. Ultimately, Microsoft Teams is interconnected with SharePoint. We speak to so many organizations and they say to us, look, Barry, we really want to roll out Microsoft Teams, but I don't want to do any of that SharePoint stuff at the moment, and we're not doing OneDrive. Can we just do the Teams component? So it's important to understand how this all hangs together and how OneDrive and how SharePoint interact with Microsoft Teams. And ultimately, what is your strategy going to be for things like file storage within each of these departments? What we ultimately see is when we start getting involved in these departmental conversations is we do find differing standards. We see things like the network share is being utilised, but we also see third-party tools like Dropbox are being utilised. Tools to send big files are being used. Now, there are fantastic tools built into OneDrive, SharePoint that allow us to collaborate in new and interesting ways. And if we can help an IT department, if we can help any department, not the IT department, understand how they could utilise it, then it means that we can align with a technical strategy to make sure that we're better able to protect and also enable everyone to work in the same way. The other area we have found important is to understand the workflow in each of the departments. So what work comes in, what goes on in the department, who are they communicating with, and where does the output go from that department? And in doing that, you're able to then consider the different workflows that you're able to enable, whether that's in something like SharePoint, whether you're using Power Automate or Flow, the same thing, or whether you're using Microsoft Lists that is going to be made available later on this year to automate some of what they're doing. These things take Microsoft Teams from just being a place where you go to place your calls, you do video conferencing, to actually be that productivity hub that everyone comes to and does their work. So Anthony, over to you on business standards.
Yeah. So what happens in this kind of stage in the process is that we've been out and we've met with the departments and we've had those open discussions with them about, you know, the flow of information in their within the department, how they communicate, what tools they use at the moment, looking, you know, for those quick wins where they could potentially use co-authoring to manage document development in parallel rather than, you know, in a serial workflow. And we come back with all this information and this fact find from all of these departments, and we have to sit down and assimilate that information and create what is the framework in which we're going to deploy Teams within. And there's three key elements to that. There are, you know, the problem with Teams is it offers multiple ways to do lots of things. It offers different places to store data, and it offers different ways in which to manage the interconnectivity between departments. So there's three key areas that we focus on to actually create the framework. First one is the rules around team creation. Barry's alluded to this, but you know, we need to make decisions which are almost, you know, across the board for the organization on rule creation, on team creation. Who can create teams? When do we create a team? When do we create a channel instead of a team? Or when do we say it's not something that needs to sit in Teams, it would be better sitting within a Yammer community? We also need to understand what we're doing with the life cycle around Teams. After we've created them, how long are they going to exist for? Are there some, you know, temporary teams with a short life cycle? And which ones are going to stay long-term within the organization? The other element, the second element, is a kind of data storage policy, because what we don't want to do is create multiple versions of data. If we've got a line of business system for, say, CRM, what we don't want to be doing in Teams is thinking, hang on a minute, we can get all of that information out of our CRM system and put it into Teams because it's easier to search for and easier to access in there. We need to make rules that say, you know, that the data stays where it is in those line of business applications, if that's appropriate, or we bring some of it into Teams. We look at, you know, meeting notes and meeting information, probably best sitting in Teams, but we draw out a policy which says where those things are going to go. And we also need to, alongside that policy, think about the security of that data and whether that data is getting backed up. And the third area is the communications charter. Teams, you know, adds lots and lots of additional ways of communicating within the organization. You know, from chat to video meetings through to the functionality within, you know, tagging notes to particular documents and to Yammer. And we need to look at those. We look at a number of scenarios. We say what happens if the managing director wants to communicate a policy change with everyone. What's the appropriate channel for that? Should that go in a team? Should that go in Yammer? Should that be a live webcast that is recorded that people can go back and watch afterwards, that's published on the company intranet via streams? Those kind of things. So this is the point where we create the framework, which is going to be the overlying kind of rules by which Teams is deployed within an organization. These three things here are things that need to go back to the project board, because they're setting the rules for how things are going to happen across the whole organization. So they need to be well documented, go back to the project board to be signed off, and then the training to inform people about these policies and the reasons behind these policies, and how to work out what you're going to do with a particular communication channel. We would always create a flow chart as part of the communications charter, so people can go, hang on a minute, this is something which is just for my team, and this I need to communicate it now. It's immediate communication, and therefore that means that it's communicated in this particular way. Is there anything you want to add to that, Barry?
No, I think that's good.
Yep. So this slide is one where we use quite a lot, and Barry spoke about this earlier. This is based on Microsoft's communication loops. This is one that we use to have a discussion with the marketing and the communications departments within the organization, to actually help them understand what type of communication would be appropriate for which types of information. And we found that a very, very useful one to put up on the board, put up on the screen, and talk around as a basis for our kind of communications workshop, which leads to that communication strategy.
So I think what is important on here is, whilst we've got one example of how these tools can be utilised and indeed does align with Microsoft's vision, what is important is not to assume that these tools will always be required. Certainly that conversation as to should I be using Yammer or not, there isn't a definitive answer, and whilst we do believe there is a place for Yammer, certain organisations will be able to get on and just use Teams without the need for Yammer as part of what they're doing. Now, we're certainly pleased to see the integration of Yammer coming into Teams with the Communities app that is now available, but it's important that as we're going through these processes, that we're not making assumptions that we are going to deliver things in a certain way. We're understanding actually what the needs of the business are, what the needs of the departments are, and making sure that we're then making the decisions that are right for your organization, and customizing, using those tools that are in the toolkit in the right way to build the right solution for you. Now, as we then come through, we're getting to the phase now where we've done the discovery. We understand actually what we want to achieve. We've made some decisions, the non-negotiables at the company level, as to what platforms are going to be used and how things are going to be communicated. We've engaged with the departments to understand the challenges they're facing, how they work, and align those to the tools that are going to be valuable to them. We're now at the stage where it's all about the hearts and minds. It's all about getting the people on board and actually truly driving that adoption that we want to be successful with. And what I think is really important here is, do not treat this like another IT project. Do not just send people lumps of training that they need to go and sit on. Gone are the days where we are able to train users in day-long sessions on how to use applications to make the most of what they're doing. My recommendation is launch with a bang. This is a new way of working for your organization. This is exciting. This is going to allow flexible and new ways of working. This is going to bring people together. It's going to allow interactions in ways that haven't been done before. It's going to simplify their workflow and make them more productive. Well, that's something to celebrate. That's something to get people involved with. And that's something that the stakeholders should be helping us sing from the rooftops and getting people on board as to why this is so important for your organization. So think about new and interesting ways that you could launch this with a big bang. A little bit more difficult if we're outside of the offices at the moment, but we've even come up with some ways for our customers where we can do this when the people are dispersed and working from home. Now, make sure in your training and adoption plan you consider the brilliant basics. Make sure that everyone is aware of the meeting, the chat, the calling, the conversations, the working on document, those brilliant basics in Microsoft Teams. There's a number of ways to do that. Small and interactive sessions we found work really well, backed up by some videos. Ideally, if you can do something in-house that's a little bit more personable, we find those videos do work better. But Microsoft does have a collection of videos that are available that are a little bit more generic, or there's other fantastic tools out there that you're able to deliver for that as well. Now, once you've kind of got those brilliant basics and people are able to use the basic functionality they should use, you're then able to start delivering training that is specific to the departments or the cross-departmental teams. Make sure it's relevant, make sure it's interesting, talk about their specific use cases, do lunch and learns, do bite-sized training videos, have launched something and then make sure that a trainer or one of the digital champions is just walking around and seeing how everyone's getting on with that. Maybe give them a dummy area that isn't the main production area where they can go and play. They can go and create a new document and share it with some people. They can try an announcement in Teams. They can do some calls and things like that without worrying that it's a production area that should be kept prim and proper. We've also done some gamification, things like quizzes and games to help people find their way around the tools and utilize it. But importantly, continuously look for that feedback. We like to do a questionnaire at the beginning of the project, understand where everyone's knowledge is and how they feel about the Microsoft tools, and then do one during the project and at the end of the project. Make sure that we're succeeding in that adoption. We've also got some other bits and pieces that we'll be able to look at the statistics of what's going on. And with anything like this, wherever you're looking to drive something, you've got to continuously promote it. I've been involved in a lot of user groups and things like that in the past, and certainly still am today. And it is a continuous effort to keep on promoting it, keep on making sure that we are talking about the benefits, talking about new features that are available. And one of the biggest advocates that we have found to do this is aligning yourself with the internal communications department and the marketing department. They will have fantastic resources that when brought together with the technical and business knowledge around this change, we can look to do something really special and look to treat this as a whole marketing activity that we want to do inside the organization. We see the usage of Yammer groups to be a place where people can go and ask questions using the Q&A functionality inside Yammer. That's really good. Teams doesn't yet have that functionality, so Yammer is one of the really good places to create an interactive question and answering area. And this is one of the examples as a printed piece of information that we have done for one of our customers. This is obviously branded as Computer World. But from that perspective, this would go through the door in a customized envelope, celebrate that the new workplace is coming, have a message when you scan the QR code from one of the senior business leaders, one of the stakeholders, and look to show some of those new features that are coming and why it is important to the organization. But this would be one of several pieces of marketing material that we would send over a course of period over the course of the project to drive the awareness as to what is possible and what could happen throughout the project. We mustn't forget that this isn't a big bang, Teams is out there and off it's gone. The nature of these projects and the nature of these technologies mean that we are continuously evolving. We should go back and look at the original challenges at the business level and the departmental level as new features come available. Think about actually, could we now help those departments or the organization with these new features? And again, Microsoft Lists, I think, is a fantastic example of things that maybe haven't been possible in Teams in the past will become possible in the future. And maybe you've been using SharePoint lists in the past, and now is the time that you can now bring that truly inside Microsoft Teams in a lot more visually appealing way. So with your champions, you want to continue that momentum that you've got, continue to make them feel special, continue to help them be informed, continue to champion them talking to their colleagues and sharing that knowledge across the organisation. Do quarterly meetings or bi-monthly meetings where you're able to hear back from them. What is working? What isn't working? What challenges are available? Is there something that has come up that actually Teams or the tools inside 365 could help them with today? Make sure the users are continuously informed, offer drop-in sessions. So we've seen the concept of the Apple Genius Bar or similar be implemented in departments where 1 or 2 days a week, there is someone that is there just to help people get more out of Office 365. You drop by, you grab a coffee together and you sit down and you're shown something. People shouldn't feel like they've got to have a problem to raise a ticket, that they can just drop by and learn some new skills that would help them. And finally, we've got to think about IT. You've got to constantly be sharpening your skills. You've got to understand where the metrics are that are able to tell you what is going on behind the scenes. You need to do things like proactively manage the teams and the modern groups that are created behind it. And Microsoft is getting a lot better at giving us the tools that we need to get those insights. So I've got 3 examples here, one within inside just the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, inside reports and usage. We're able to see usage across the board. And don't forget, Teams is a little bit like a shop window to the rest of the Office 365 tools. So in driving adoptions, you might want to see a decline in internal email. You might want to see the growth of data being stored in OneDrive and SharePoint going up over time. We need to get an understanding, is that being successful? Are conversations growing on Yammer and Teams? Do we need to rethink one of those strategies that we've put in place in the past? And the Microsoft 365 Admin Center reports and usage not only allows us to get the insight into Microsoft Teams, but also all those other elements so we can agree and understand how we're doing. We can then dive a little bit deeper in the Teams usage reports and things like that in the Admin Center, but they're also now available in the Teams client as well. If you click the little settings icon, the cog down at the bottom of the screen, you can go and view it for individual teams, or you can go and view it for all the teams to understand what's going on. But also don't forget about things like Power BI and PowerShell. We use a set of PowerShell reports to help us report upon what's going on, spot things like orphaned teams where the owners no longer exist and we need to resolve that situation. Make sure people are on top of expiration and things like important groups aren't going to expire. Hopefully by bringing these technical elements with all the business and the human elements, the hearts and minds, really engaging the people, listening to them, helping them, we're able to push forward and utilising the skills of the communications and marketing professionals inside your organisation. Make something really special about this. This is a new way IT are tackling projects. So I hope you found the information that we've shared with you today useful. More than happy to jump on a one-to-one session and go through some of these concepts and how they would apply to your organisation. The QR code and the link on screen allows you the option to book a free strategy planning session with myself, Anthony, or one of the other professionals at Computer World. And there is also the opportunity to win that Lego Technic Land Rover Defender as well, which hopefully will be a bit of fun for the whole family. We thank you ever so much for joining us today. Please don't forget the surveys. They're really important to us. We like to offer to present at these kind of things, hopefully to give back a little bit to the community. And we want to make sure that we are sharing content and information that is useful to you. So if you wouldn't mind going over to the session surveys and giving us a little bit of feedback, that'd be really appreciated. And I'll pass back over to our host now. Anthony and I will be available in the breakout session that comes afterwards.
All right. We are at the end of this session, and you can go to the breakout room. There are no questions this time, and I would really like to thank Barry and Anthony for a good run through. I agree with everything you said. It was a good overview. And let's head over to the breakout room and continue the discussion there. Thank you.